Welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I am your host, David Brickley. Each and every show, we talk to the experts and get their expert advice on the ever-changing social, digital marketing landscape. This show is no different. Episode 85. If you're watching on YouTube, we got a little bit of a hint here as our guest sent us, Will, a bunch of gear here. I mean, you can't be more generous than what they sent over to the team here.
I was stunned to walk into 3 large boxes chock full of great Oakley, and not just like giveaway stuff too, like really nice solid product.
Like 14 hoodies, 2 parkas, like
golf polos,
10 golf polos, 20 t-shirts. I mean,
extreme generosity.
The STN. I mean, it pays to play in the office. You come in the office for a couple days a week, you might get some.
Leaving with a hoodie.
So, all right, so let's get into it. Before we get into our guest, Will, episode 85. I know Vernon Davis was 85. However, I don't want to call this the Vernon Davis podcast. So I'm hoping you have something better over there.
I didn't think he'd be the first one to come to your mind. There's one for me at 85 that comes top of mind.
No, Shannon Sharp's 84. Who's 85? I don't know.
Well, he doesn't go by 85. He goes by Ocho Cinco.
That's, yeah.
A couple other ones. Antonio Gates, definitely one of the GOATs.
Gates,
and Jack Youngblood.
All right. Let's call this the Ocho Cinco podcast, which is perfect, right? You might just think we're talking about the number, but we're talking about the player. And that's, I think, perfect for our guy, Antonio, as well. Antonio Bonifacio is the product and merchandise senior director at Oakley, North America. And his counterpart, David Burkat, the director of apparel product and merchandising at Oakley, North America. Antonio has spent 15 years there. David has been there, I forget, Will. Not as many years as Antonio, but he spent a ton of years over at Nike as well, working on the NFL product. But yeah, 14 years at Nike, and then he's now over at Oakley. But I'm excited. I know we've talked to so many folks on the sports apparel side, and I'm really excited to get into all things Oakley with these two gentlemen coming out of New York.
Yeah, I think they're going to be great. I think Antonio has a really interesting perspective coming from Milan and then now moving to New York and working on the product that is in Milan.
Yeah.
So kind of that dual country thing. And I think I'm really excited to hear kind of what they do in the glasses, apparel, golf, sports space. These guys are doing.
All right, let's get into it. Antonio and David over there at Oakley for episode 85 right here on the Business of Social podcast. All right, I am so excited to talk to the fine folks over at Oakley, North America. First and foremost, Antonio Bonifacio is the Product and Merchandising Senior Director at Oakley, and David Burkat is the Director of Apparel Product and Merchandising. Fellas, thanks so much for the time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, and great to have this moment for us and for our brands.
Of course, man. So I would love to start with you, Antonio. Walk us through just your day-to-day and what you oversee over at Oakley.
So thank you. Great questions. I've been with the company more than 12, 13 years almost. So I've seen a lot day to day. So definitely in the most.
This is very rare in our industry. Usually people are hopping every 2 years. So you're an old vet.
Yeah. No, it's great. And Oakley gave me a lot and gave me also a family. So my wife works in the industry as well. So
awesome.
Definitely a great story. So the day-to-day is really at this moment of my career, working especially with David, is really like about collaboration and aligning all the different counterparts that we have between New York here in the US, Montreal in Canada, Footy Ranch, California, where the brand basically was founded and lives and breathes, and also like our Milan counterparts in Italy, making sure that our headquarters is always aligned. So the day-to-day is all about, in my case, is all about collaboration and really work closely with all the counterparts in all these main cities when it comes to sales, marketing, planning, and demand planning, supply chain. And then, of course, the most exciting part is about product design and product development, and really making sure that all the go-to-market flow is aligned. So again, the day-to-day, it's all about collaboration, and most importantly, the most exciting part is working about the product itself. So
awesome.
Touching, feeling, and getting excited about the brand that we wear.
Yep. David, walk us through your role.
Yeah, so I think day-to-day is really about structuring our North America merchandising. Everything from right product, right place, right time, down to how we're going to segment and what consumers we're going to talk about and what verticals. As you know, we're in naturally in a lot of different sport performance categories. So there's a lot of different consumers in each of those, from cycling to MX all the way down to, golf and even on field with football visors that you're seeing on Sundays.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm excited to really dig in with you all about just the overall brand strategy. I think based on everywhere you guys touch, like you just said, motocross, NFL, golf, but also the casual wear. I mean, you guys have really dominated the sunglass industry for so many years now. But when you guys when you walk into like a year like 2022, how is the Oakley brand holding up, and what are you guys looking to do with it as we move forward over the next decade or so?
Oh, that's a great question, David. Thank you very much. So the reality is that we usually say that we start the year in a hot spot, right? So if you look at Oakley, our consumer, and the way that we're targeting a special young consumer more and more, thanks to the voice of our athletes, it's really starts our journey with January, between all the different sport events that we have, January and February. You look at our sport calendar, we start with Phoenix Open, we start with the road to Super Bowl, then we go into the Super Bowl, and then we go into, in this year specifically, with the Winter Olympics. So the year starts in a very hot spot for us, in a very healthy way.
You guys both need a vacation is what you're saying.
Yes. We are recording, right? So
yeah.
You're gonna say that to a chat, but yes, absolutely. We started the year in a very crowded sport calendar, and the strategy is really all about, of course, pre-planning and planning before months and months in advance, sometimes also years. If you think at the Olympic Games, for example, with our athletes, with our product, and most importantly also with our consumer, making sure that we target the right consumer. So as I said, we are going younger and younger. And in that sense, if you look at what Super Bowl showed to us, with more than 110 people, right, really watching the show, attending, by the way, for those who were lucky to attend, even the half game show was amazing this year. So we are present there on field with our visors, with our football shields, as we call on the athlete helmets. And we are there present also off the field, right, with our lifestyle products. So the strategy at the moment is working, is targeting the young consumer through the voice of our athlete, and of course, thanks to the I would say our core business is the eyewear, because we are really a premium sport brand where we are actually more and more investing on technology and developments. And
I just wanted to thank you guys again. I mean, Oakley just hooked it up. Look at all this gear here. You got the hoodie. I mean, you guys spoiled me and my entire team. I appreciate you. And I got to have more friends in the apparel industry and just, the merchandising industry. You guys are too kind. So you're setting a good precedent here for future podcast guests. I'm just saying. But you talk about that young consumer, and that's so interesting, because honestly, every Fortune 5, every brand that I talk to on a day-to-day basis, they want to get younger. They want to hit Gen Z. Talk me through what has been successful. I mean, obviously a lot of brands are going to the TikToks of the world. They're creating more raw content over polished content, because it seems like that's what's working. But I'm sure you guys have trialed and errored a lot to make sure you remain authentic and genuine to that younger audience. What has worked well for you over the last year or so?
Well, I mean, it's a very complex one, right?
Yeah.
And this journey for us started a few years ago, when we really started to go deeper and deeper into the NFL partnership, targeting the young consumer. I would say that we have been very agile in targeting the young consumer, in the sense that what we saw successfully working is really to connect with the young audience, not only on social media, but actually where they exercise, where they train, where they go to shop, right?
Yeah.
So it's really be active in those spaces, targeting not only the consumer itself, but the community they belong to. I'll give you just a very pragmatic example. In the last few months, we had the two major events of, let's say, Q1, right? So Super Bowl and Phoenix Open. We went there as Oakley, definitely producing and making sure that the product is showcased, but also the media content is produced and for this consumer, but actually engaging with the young people on the field. So making sure that our athletes, and I will give you some names, like Patrick Mahomes, for example, engage with the kids on the field, test the product, talk about the product, talk about our prism technology, that is this awesome lens that we developed at this point from more than a decade. So really see the difference and get engaged with the brands and attach the brands the moment they grow up. So it's really engage with them for real, not only just on social. And that was I think a touching moment for all of us when we saw this young consumer look at the difference between a simple visor and an Oakley visor or an Oakley shield, and look at the difference on how this can shape also the future, how they can really perform on the field using our technology on the eyewear side, of course.
David, I'd love to toss a question over your way. I know you spent a ton of time over at Nike on the NFL product as well. So how have you seen that work? I mean, if you put your consulting hat on me for a second, obviously at Nike and Oakley, what has been some of your favorite ways to really tap into that consumer in a genuine way?
Well, it starts with a lot of observation and consumer behavior patterns, right? The consumer has more options now than ever before. Things are changing constantly. It's a very fluid space. And I think first point that anytime we jump into something, we want to keep our eyes open and see what's going on, like what's a trend and what's a behavior. And then from there, trying to adopt to what are future trends that are coming in, what matters most to them, where they're spending their time and their money and their effort, and what matters the most. Because there's different products that need different reasons, right? So you have to solve that problem. But at the heart of it, if it's not authentic and it doesn't have the insight for the use that they want, and it doesn't match kind of the aesthetic or how they approach their behavior in it, like it's gonna fail. So
right.
I said it earlier, it's kind of that simple formula of the right product at the right time at the right place. So,
and then how do you guys look at distribution? Just putting gasoline on that fire in a sense. When you talk about, your product is seen on linear, it's in the Super Bowl. Maybe a player is wearing it or an athlete's wearing it on the golf course. What have you seen be successful in terms of extending that narrative and that distribution off linear, what the athlete is doing, and make sure you kind of generate that buzz?
Well, it's kind of a halo effect. I think you look at it from the point of the brand, right? So when a visor shows up on field on Sundays, for example, the importance of the product is why the athlete is wearing it. And then once you start to see the branding, obviously with the ellipse on the visor tabs, it sparks that awareness, and then they start to look into your brand. But if it stops there from a product perspective, you really lose your essence. So how do you bring that into an offering where, some pieces are there to just express their love for the brand and the visors of whatever sport they are? Or from a golf perspective, how are you tapping in a little bit deeper into as we like to say sometimes is, if in the golf community, some of those sayings and words that kind of extend a little bit deeper to talk authentically to that consumer. So those are, I feel like, some of the recipes to extend a little bit deeper than, just surface level product.
Yeah. I've been asking so many marketers on the program, although I kind of want to get past it, I still think it's just such an amazing time in history of how we all adjusted during COVID, especially with you all when it comes to not being able to have the product in stores and things like that, but also more time than ever. I mean, golf was through the roof in terms of people golfing and outdoors, and I mean, they needed your product more than ever. So would love to hear both of you, what you learned from that time, and maybe what you're still applying based on that time period with your consumer and all that.
I would say what we learned from that time is that our productivity jumped to the roof, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
so in terms of really, even I still remember those days with David, calling each other and trying to understand the future of the product, especially in golf, for example, right? Or in bike. It's the two major trends that we saw during the last 2 years in North America. And for me personally, was really like, how do we make sure that whenever these things called COVID-19 is done or softening, we are ready to target and we are ready to get market share or be on the floor, let's say in our wholesale customers or be at point of sales with our retail stores. And what we have different So how do we invest that time of 1 year of 2020 to be different, right? And of course, there was a lot of discussion about product development that David can elaborate more than me, but also like the voice. How do we communicate to our consumer and to the young generation? And really, I thought that the campaign that we launched recently, that is called "Be Who You Are," it's exactly what across all the departments that work with Oakley during COVID-19, and everybody was closing their kitchen or bedroom or whatever studio was really looking to be who you are. After COVID-19, everybody, I think, showcased a little bit of more empathy, I would say, to the human beings population, but also really like, hey, I want to make sure that I come across on who I am really through the voice of even my appearance, my product, and we as Oakley, we try to be ready for that moment when people are going out or really exercising or performing, as we used to say in the sport industry, making sure that they are ready to, to really perform at the highest level with the product innovation that we brought and the campaign marketing that we launched in the last few months. I would say that was the first one. The second one is really targeting the athletes. Sport was on pause, as you know very well, for some months. Yep. We had, of course, the luxury of being, we have the luxury of being a premium sport brand in the eyewear industry and going more and more into the apparel discussion. Our athletes were, of course, still performing in most of the cases. So how do we use our athletes? How do we make sure that we engage with them and they engage also virtually in their platform with the fan base? And I think that really, I just go back to, again, Patrick Mahomes, but I can give you the entire roster here, is really like the way they really engage with the consumer, or actually with their fan base, on even wearing our product while they were even going for a walk whenever it was permitted, let's say. So it was really product development, marketing development, and really making sure that our athletes support us during those tough times.
And then, David, how have you seen the consumer behavior change because of COVID, right? Because I think for so long, trying on apparel in the store, the brick and mortar, obviously with sunglasses, you want to look in the mirror and see how you look. But I mean, consumer behavior has changed so much where I don't think it'll ever go back to where it was 10 years ago. What have you guys seen on your side?
The same thing. I think first and foremost, it starts with a little bit of trust in the brands that you're familiar with, right? Because you're buying online, the experiences was kind of pivoting and changing. But I think most of all of the change, and it kind of goes back to the previous question, was I'll never forget the day that like New York Times put out like the day sports stopped. And like everything got shut down from the first NBA game to March Madness, this chain reaction. And learning how like resilient everybody was, because like that lasted for only a few weeks once everybody kind of understood. And then participation rates in golf took off. We're in New York. You could hear the sirens now, but you couldn't buy a road bike or a mountain bike or anything in the city because everybody started biking and hiking. And so I think out of that, was good timing for us because wearing sunglasses is helpful outdoors, right? So that's the first thing is, sunglass sales went up, and then sport-specific apparel went up because people are participating in golf, in hiking, anything that had some sort of spatial distance or natural social distance. And I think I learned that the most, that you're not going to stop it. You're not going to stop sport.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you stay relevant? And we talked a lot about getting younger, but you guys had so much success even 20 years ago with even like, Gen X and that generation, getting into millennials. Now you want to get younger as well. How have you guys found that balance of not turning off your main consumer that's bringing in the most amount of your revenue, while also testing a newer, younger demographic to ensure that you stay relevant over time?
I would say, and we can split this, I would say it's all about innovation. It's all about innovation. And it's true that there is always the base of consumers that are going to remember Oakley for what it was X number of years ago. Yeah. But innovation is what triggers a new brand awareness, new demand, and really new interest, right? For even going and look at our product. I cannot share a lot on what we're going to launch in the next probably 8 weeks or so, but I would say it's really about innovation in our sense on the eyewear side. On the apparel side, I would say it's more about having a point of view that is completely out of the blue, completely different from what we see from, I would not say our competitors, but other brands that are we are trying to gain space from. So it's really about innovation and really having a point of view from a design perspective. So one of our line is disrupt with design. So and it's all about that.
And then go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, and I would say, like, look, we're not looking as much when we approach apparel as like the old versus the new or the old versus the young. We're kind of looking at it as like, what problem are we trying to solve first and foremost? And then what matters the most and how can we ingrain that? One example was we want to be more sustainable coming into our future, right, as much as we can. And so one of those things was a biodegradable polyester that can like end the life cycle or close the loop of the garment or the design.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Cotopaxi in the last episode, and like that's a deal breaker for younger consumers. Like you need to be able to have the sustainability and the give back. Like that's a huge difference from other generations.
Yeah, and I think like the I'll say older now, but the older generations are starting to understand that impact and the importance of it, and noticing that it doesn't take away from the garment now because it's starting to advance better, and at the same time it still solves the problem. So I think there's trade-offs that like everybody's in on regardless of what demographic you fall into.
Well, speaking of feeling like you're old, I'm 35, but I was on TikTok after the Super Bowl. And all these kids are like, who's this Dr. Dre guy? I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. So that's when it's the generations are changing. I know both of you are students of the space and you're watching what's going on and with different apparel brands, whether they're competitors or not. So Antonio, I'll start with you. What do you think brands get wrong when it comes to marketing their product, trying to connect to the consumer? What have you seen?
My personal experience that something can go wrong when you are trying to do a little bit of everything.
Ooh, I like that.
So
yeah,
in our space, especially on the sport apparel, I mean, we can stay here and talk about days about who is the competitor of what and how and which space, right? I think it all comes to focus and priorities. I'm gonna say very, very, very straight. So focus and priorities, not only where the dollars are, where the main buyer is going to dictate your budget, but it's really about the consumer that you're targeting and really what are the 2 or 3 priorities that you want to drive as a brand, and where do you want to have a voice. There are many we call sport vertical in which Oakley is not. Right? It comes from our heritage, our innovation in the eyewear, our attachment also to the consumer that is more the consumer that wants to disrupt, as I said before, with the design that he's wearing or she's wearing. I'm gonna say probably something controversial. It's probably the uncommon guy that we want to target always, and with all our products. And to me, it's just picking the lane, making sure that it's all about priorities and really not trying to do a little bit of everything, because we have seen many brands, from our experience, we have the same age at this point to share. So there's many brands that were at the peak and then they failed when they start bastardizing a little bit their heritage. So the strong point of view of Oakley coming from the heritage is really to make sure that we pick our lane in those 3 or 4 categories and sport. That's my 2 cents. I don't know, Dave, if you want to expand.
Yeah. It's perfect.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree as well.
I think at the end of the day, it's like that authenticity, right? Be everybody to everything, and if you focus, it's a lot easier.
And it all comes to our marketing campaign, as I said before. Be who you are, right?
Yeah.
So not try to be another you. So the only one that can really define you is yourself. So, and that is important for our consumer. Ourselves that are lucky enough to work for this brand, but also our brand itself. Be who you are is our brand.
I've always been curious to ask this question. So like Luxottica obviously is the parent company, the umbrella company, which also, dominates the entire eyewear industry. but also all those companies are competitors, but they're also sister companies. Is there any crossover where you're able to tap into that ecosystem of some of those sister companies, or do you guys stay very separate in your lanes as like separate companies? What have you guys seen on your side?
So, I mean, I can answer that because from my accent, I'm Italian. Was born and raised in Luxottica, Milan. So I come from that side of the ocean, I would say. I'm still working on the accent, David. So, but
me too.
More American as I can. So I would say, listen, Luxottica is a company that at this point is under the name of Essir Luxottica, as we are merging with the Essilor as well. We are more than $20 million company, right? Crazy. So it's a big beast, right? In the eyewear industry.
Well, I saw your CEO at one point said like 500 million people are wearing the sunglasses at any given time. Like it's insane.
If you think about it's an object that in the 70s and 90s was a medical object, right? So and our founder Leonardo Del Vecchio went into it. Let's beautify this functional object with a bunch of licenses that we had, like Giorgio Armani, Prada, and then we acquired Ray-Ban, and then we acquired Oakley. So it has been a journey. But going back to your question, I will say that we are basically we have all these brands, and each one has their own identity. You have the luxury brand Prada, Dolce Gabbana, Versace, all these, or Tiffany, all these brands are very luxury. Then you have a lifestyle brand like Ray-Ban. No matter what, no matter where you are grown up, or no matter which part of the world you are, you know what Ray-Ban is, right? And then you have a sport brand like Oakley. Now, it happened to me in these several years of Luxottica, the same person is wearing three different brands for the same day.
Three different reasons.
Three different reasons, right? So you want to go out and meet your buddies for a coffee, and you're wearing Ray-Ban, but then you're performing outside running or biking with your pair of Oakley, and then at night you're having a date, or you're having a family, and you're wearing a nice suit, and you're wearing a nice pair of Prada. So I would say it's not there is not a lot of crossover, but it's really making sure that from a marketing perspective, brand perspective, and consumer and product perspective, we are targeting different consumer, of course, because of the nature of the brand, but sometimes is the same person for different occasions.
In your 15 years, have you ever seen like a crossover, like a Ray-Ban Oakley crossover, any like campaign where it makes sense, or does it always make sense to kind of stay more separate?
No, each one really stayed authentic.
Interesting.
We had even the product technology itself between Ray-Ban lenses or not lenses that proprietary, let's say, I would say, they're owned by the brand, they're owned by Luxottica, and we don't use a lot of.
Interesting. I'm sure it hurts your marketing or your social team a little bit, because like you look at like a Disney that owns a Hulu and a Marvel and an ESPN, and sometimes there's ways to kind of have fun ways to tap into those different audiences if it makes sense for those campaigns. But there's like so much amazing brands under that umbrella, and then just so much ambassadorship and brand loyalists under each of those buckets. That's so impressive. I want to get into online a little bit more. So obviously ecomm is a huge engine for your guys' success, but talk me through some of the things that you guys have seen over the last couple of years. I know Instagram shopping was a big deal for a lot of apparel companies, eyewear companies. But what have you guys seen, like different technologies or different features like that, maybe across social media? And David, I can throw this to you as well, that you've seen work or you guys are excited to try more on.
So I would say the different technology or different behavior. To your point, e-commerce is booming. When we look at Oakley.com, the website is on fire in terms of content, but also in terms of dollar generation and revenue generation, of course. What we have seen, it's really more and more that the famous omni-channel approach, right? So as a brand, you go in the retail store, or maybe you shop online and then you go to the retail store. So that the pandemic really accelerated that component, at least from our side. We used, I would say, to have really almost like state and church, right? Really e-commerce, retail, wholesale. But the pandemic accelerated that omni-channel component to the point that also e-commerce, yes, is a huge part of the business. Retail is big as well, but wholesale is where the brands lives and breathes. So what I used, right? So we are talking about big national accounts. I don't want to name here, but you can imagine if you are in the North American territory between US and Canada, who they are. But even like national accounts. But then what we discovered during the last few years is that we have this small mom and pop store we call independence account.
Yeah.
They have their own website. They have their own community that is following them. They have their own digital strategy that are completely different. You're talking a bike store versus a surf store versus a generic sporting goods store.
Right.
And each one is trying to tap to one single thing, in my view, that is the main brand message. And when you look at our brand, and I go again, sorry to stick on that line, be who you are, they really stick on the fact that they really like, and all of these players like the fact that Oakley has one voice, is called be who you are. And that's what the product is trying to do in innovation of we really are. So disruptive design and innovation, of course. And on the marketing side is really like target those athletes that can have a voice to attract the young generation. So I will say more than my comment, more than the technology itself and the platform itself, it's really about, I saw that omni-channel approach, even sometimes not even done in a voluntary base, like it was almost, it happened naturally. It's almost to have everybody aligned on the message and on the content itself. It was really a big moment. Just to give you a very short story. So it was a big moment when we launched some of we call capsule internally, right? And we launched that capsule of product in e-commerce in our retail store, flagship store, like with the one we have here on Fifth Avenue or in many other cities, mega cities in the US. And then in what we call the icon doors, the brand ambassador of the situation, like small stores that are bike store or surf store. Those capsules go out in less than, 3 hours. And it's not because we are pumping promotions or discounts. It's really because when you have everybody aligned on the concept that is be who you are, disrupt with the design, and bring something different to the market, the consumer naturally, shops and look for that product in a seamless way, I would say. No matter if you belong to a community in New Jersey or in New York, or you are shopping online from your couch, or you happen to be on Fifth Avenue and go in an Oakley store.
David, I'd love to hear, based on your career as well, what have you seen be successful in terms of owning your customer, right? Because if you, obviously from the wholesale standpoint, your product is in retail, but you necessarily can't really communicate with that consumer. They may not necessarily follow you on social or be in your email database. I know I've seen things like QR codes and registering your product, but have there been anything else that you've seen work really well to try to create that circle in a sense where you can target anybody that loves your brand?
Yeah, I think, it's unlocking some of the assets and the messaging that we're doing on the brand side to, these independent accounts or regional accounts, to allow them to kind of tack on to the message to support, the followers and the impressions that they're getting from their social accounts or .com accounts. And it goes out there with a consistent message for our brand, but it shows that support for them to be able to leverage Facebook shopping or Instagram shopping platforms. And then at the same time, it kind of creates a natural segmentation too, because they buy into, your global line or your regional line as they see fit for their consumer using some of those same assets. And then, as the bike shop has a meetup for a ride, or you have a run club out there, you have the communities that they're already talking to. So it kind of naturally proliferates, I think, your message than just to where you are from a vertical standpoint.
Yeah, then Dave, I think I want to throw this back at you as well. What trends are you just seeing overall in men's apparel that you guys are trying to tackle onto?
Good question. They're always changing. I think the one trend or the one theme is there used to be a line and now there's no line, right? This transition from I'm going to play golf, then I'm going to head back out into my everyday life, continues to be a macro trend that stands true. I always like to say, I have a big golf background and I love golf, but I'm not going to dress up in golf performance stuff to watch, the Sunday's Masters on the couch.
Right.
Give me a t-shirt, give me a hoodie, give me something that embraces a little bit more of, my day-to-day of my love for the sport and then my love for the brand. So I feel like that's a strong trend that's going on. And then you're seeing a little bit of that crossover of what works really good as one functional attribute in, say, surfing, with a board short paired with, just a nice typical performance short in golf. And so marrying those together into a hybrid of sorts.
That's a good point.
Kind of starts to do that. And then you start to look at those athletes, they do everything. There was just a post today about Dustin Johnson, fishing, doing some saltwater fishing, versus how many Masters that he won. Kelly Slater is a huge golfer. So the transitional athlete or consumer doesn't just exist at a pro level. I think it exists in all of us because, I'm a multi-sport person and identify as one thing either. So I think it's a macro trend that we're really...
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. I didn't really until you articulated, but yeah, just looking when you're shopping for things, things are starting to really cross over where that golf pant can easily be something you can work out in, which can easily be something you wear out on a Sunday brunch, right? That seems to be, and it used to be very harsh lines, I feel like 10 or 15 years ago. Let's go back to athletes for a second as well. Obviously, partnering with these athletes is helpful to tap into their audience and to ensure that relevancy as well. What's worked best? What partnerships or campaigns have you guys seen? And this is for either one of you, just work really well or something that you guys are proud of over at Oakley? I know you mentioned Patrick Mahomes a lot, so I'm sure he's up there.
Definitely. Of course, we are very proud of our partnership with the athletes. And just to name again, Patrick Mahomes is the first one to have in mind, but I can go sport by sport. We have them. We have soccer. Just recently signed Kylian Mbappé to really Michaela Schifrin on the snow side, let's say on the ski side. Mark Cavendish on the bike. We have Damian Lillard. So we can stay all of them, listing all of them. Dylan Fratelli, that David really works very, very close to develop the product on the golf side. Stale Sandbeck, that is again a snowboarder. So we're very proud about our I would say our friends more than just athletes. Okay, so they to me, in all these years of working with this brand, it always resonated to me that many of our athletes or all our athletes know the brand even before we approach them. They know as they grow up in that spot, right? And really, to me, the highest moment in this topic is when we were shooting this video with Patrick Mahomes, and we were our crew was out there and producing content, and this was during the pandemic, and really, we were trying to break the ice. I don't remember now the perfect moment, but he really just say, hey guys, be who you are, so don't stress too much on the script or everything. And that moment with our marketing group, media group, said, oh, that's the campaign. So you have that light. So, and be who you are is, that's what he meant. He didn't use exactly those words, but it's really exactly what resonate, with all our athletes. If you look if you go on our website, you look at our athletes, they really show up as they authentically they are. No matter if they are athletes or they're performing in or off their field or their mountain or their green grass. It's really they are what they do. They wear our product, yes, to perform, but it's really because they are actually, to David's point before, really seeing a value in wearing our product because they find themselves. So to me, that was the point. And I can go on and on that leads.
I know we're all almost at time, so I want to hit you guys with some rapid fire questions if you're open to it. So I would love to hear from both of you any book, podcast, newsletter, blog that you consume daily, weekly that helps you do your job better?
Oh man, that's tough. Simon Sinek is a good book.
Same.
Follow, like in his podcast and his little drops. I think that's the first one.
Yeah.
So I'm an avid podcast, so of course I listen to you guys.
Of course.
Every morning I like to do 2 or 3 just about news. So Financial Times is what really I really like. Of course, Italian news. So I have a couple of podcasts in Italian, but there is a good one on the tech side that I really like. That is Sway from Cara Swisher. I don't know if you are familiar with. So I really like that sense of that podcast and those interviews that she performed. In terms of books, right now I'm reading Sapiens. So it's not really business oriented or really like defining who we are, right? So as human.
Outside of Oakley, any brands or accounts or creators that you guys follow across social media that inspire you, or just you enjoy what they're doing from a marketing apparel standpoint? Just think it's interesting.
Oh man, I feel like I'm consuming them all at rapid rate just to try to tack onto. I think you always look to Patagonia for their sustainability point of view, right? And it's not done until it's the way they want it. I think Nike from that aspirational, inspirational sport perspective. And I always love the stuff that we're doing too. Like some of the stuff coming down the pipeline is going to be pretty exciting. So,
right on.
That's about what I got.
Yeah, and on my side, listen, not to be repetitive, but of course, all these brands that David mentioned. But I'm almost I look at those brands that have those obsessed attention to the details. So no matter if we're talking about Ferrari or Maserati in the automotive, real brands in our space that are under Luxottic umbrellas, were like Oliver Peoples, for example, attention of the details on the eyewear or the apparel side. So I'm very obsessed with all those brands that have really that obsessive attention to details, and I can name here Shinola or Rolex for the watch. So I'm really into these all these brands that are.
I'm also like I kind of geek out or get fascinated with like how Apple packages their product, right, and like how everything's perfect and stuff like that. Just like interests me on how they make sure that attention to detail is always present. What's the where do you guys think the undervalued attention is in marketing? This can be influencers. This can be still some out-of-home things people aren't leveraging. Like, what have you guys seen that you feel like brands aren't taking advantage of that maybe Oakley has seen success in?
It's this is of course is a tough one. I don't know if even Simon Sinek has the answer or but I would, or the best marketing professor at Harvard. I would say that my experience is that really connecting with communities is what really helps a lot. We do a lot of events. We're very proud of that. We do a lot of events with, again, as I said before, local customers.
So showing up at those marathons, showing up at those bigger events. Got it.
Bike ride of the Saturday of the middle-aged management in Lycra, right? So what we call. So it's really showing up with our brand ambassador. We call field marketing rep. Showing up, explaining the product, explaining the technology, and that's what really brings I think the attachment for first of all the brand awareness, and then the attachment. Of course, always the media campaign of the situation, the big launch, the really closing Times Square for the launch of the next campaign. Of course, it's always kind of exciting. But I really think the community and even the local influencer is what really helps to bring brand awareness, and then of course brand conversion, right, to the real point of sales or the website, I would say.
Yeah, I think so many brands like try to automate that, and if you actually go out there, and it may not be scalable in a sense, but if you go out there and impress 94 people, like that can just spread like wildfire, right, David?
That is what I see more and more, especially because the young consumer, to your point, sustainability, but also the concept of community or belonging to a community. to me, it's fascinating. We're the same age, and I don't know if we were attached to that word,
Right.
community.
Right. Dave, what about you? Yeah.
Shops, it's just about that local. The local shops have so much local knowledge. They have the culture, the subculture. They have everything.
And you can tap into that trust, right? That trust that person has with that brand. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think that's where we have a lot of fun on some group rides in the city, is those local shops. And, they know everywhere. Even if you're traveling, this is my favorite tip. Even if you're traveling, just head to a local bike shop or whatever, ask them about a route. They'll tell you right away if it's a good one or a bad one.
Yeah, what's interesting, and I think it may be part of your culture, and it's funny 15 years later or so, but you guys obviously sent me a ton of gear, which I appreciate. My dad was actually in Operation Enduring Freedom back in 2002 after 9/11, and Oakley sent his entire 14-person team, free Oakleys, combat glasses, and he talks about that to this day, right? So it's the little things like, let's just give 14 pairs of glasses, not that big of a deal for the bottom line, but it builds that brand loyalty. And, those people just talk about those stories over and over again. So I promise I'll talk about this story of you guys sending product as well. I'll end with this for both of you. Where's the, or I guess, advice for, especially with your career, 15 years there, Antonio, and then obviously David with huge brands, Nike and Oakley, but advice for folks trying to get into the apparel industry, marketing industry. If you had to go talk to a bunch of college students, what's your go-to?
You go first on this.
Well, I know. I think when Antonio said it about some of the other brands, I think when you're jumping into it, there's kind of a two-prong approach. One, when you jump into your career, you need to assess the details. You got to know your numbers, know your consumer, whatever facet of the business is, you really need to understand and know the why, I think it is. And then the second piece is, don't limit yourself 100% just to what your responsibility is.
Yeah.
You got to see the forest for the trees, because in my position, you're talking to sales as much as I'm talking to design and development. Mm-hmm. And if I can't speak those languages, like how do we communicate and get the right thing done? So you also got to learn the job to your left and to your right.
That's a great point.
You got to know your own job. So that sounds counterproductive to what I think my point is, but that's where I would start.
No, it's so true. And so many brands like marketing and sales and innovation, they don't talk. And then if you're not talking, you can't properly market the product. So I totally relate to that. What about you, Antonio?
That's a tough question. I know my personal experience, I start with the numbers. So I'm a number guy. David makes fun of me because I wear the finance vest every day and the finance hat. But no, really, I think that, from my little experience, I would say that the best advice that I got when I want to build this kind of career was really to be humble, first of all, in being willing to learn every day, no matter at what seniority you are. But you need to learn. If you close your backpack and if you leave your office every day, you learn something new. It's the biggest achievement on my side. Yeah. And I would say the three bullet points that I have that I try to carry in my backpack every day is really to make sure that I know what I'm talking about from a scientific standpoint. It's like a number, it's like a product. They makes fun of me. I'm not 100% on the composition of our polos or everything, but if you know scientifically what you're talking about, that's step number one, and can be again a number or a product point. The second point is to make sure that you know exactly who you have in front of you, right? So to be empathetic and to be humble enough to talk with people. I know we are all used now to team call or Zoom call or everything that is on a screen, but we're talking about people. So if you have that human touch every time that you're talking about a product, a project, or a number, or everything, that's step number two. And the number three, honestly speaking, is everybody wants to be a designer, right? Everybody wants to design the cool stuff every time, no matter if it's a polo or a jacket or a slide, right? And I think that the third advice on my side is really like to be ready to artistically present your case. It can be on a slide or it can be on a product. So making sure that you're on point and you are perfect in the way you are pitching or your point. So if I had, I do a lot of mentorship for my business school And I always use these three. So know scientifically what you're talking about.
Yep.
Make sure to understand who is in front of you. That is, can be a buyer, can be the president of the company, can be your manager, and attack them from a human perspective. And the third one is really artistically elaborate or artistically show them your case. So these are the three main points. But really, the humble component is always where I start, because especially if you want to be in brands like Oakley or all the Luxottica brands that we have that are huge, and the competition is of course bigger and bigger every day, and we're all adapting. You need to be humble to learn every day something. And TikTok was not here, and now we are showcasing all our brands on TikTok. And 10 years ago was a trade media, right? So going on those newspaper in opticians or in sports stores, doing buying our pages on those newspapers. So it's being humble. I think it's the biggest one.
I love it, man. Well, thank you both so much for breaking down everything over at Oakley and all the knowledge you brought in. And I'm going to be in New York in mid-May, so I'd love to get the dinner so I can see Antonio in some Prada glasses. Cause I know the different. I want to see the different phases of Antonio and David. The Oakley phase, the Ray-Ban phase, and the.
Yeah. So we are super happy to host you, and just
awesome.
Tell us when you are here, and we have a showroom on 37 and 5th.
I love it.
And all our office, all our corporate offices, we are based in Manhattan. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you both so much for the time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, adios. Bye.
All right,
bye. Ciao.
Well, thank you so much to both Antonio and David for coming on the program. I'm going to take them up on that offer. I mean, checking out the Oakley facilities over there in New York, Will. I mean, say less. I'd love to. So that'll be fun.
I mean, if it's anything like the the small sample size that they sent us, I'm sure they're going to hook you up with some nice stuff.
That's not why I'm going. I want to meet the fine folks in person. But no, some really good insight there. I did like what David said towards the end of the program about the crossover when it comes to apparel in general, how people want to have, like, again, that short, that polo that can be transitioned from the office to the golf course and what have you. And I never really noticed that. And when he said that, I'm like, that's right. Every time I go to, the Dick's Sporting Goods of the world, I feel like the clothing is becoming more where I do honestly have a pair of shorts that I've worn to the beach. I've worn out golfing. Like, just that crossover continues across apparel, which is super interesting. And just loved getting all their insight and knowledge on the show.
I really liked Antonio's earlier point too about like Mahomes and engaging with people as he's wearing the product. And he's like, wow, Patrick Mahomes wears Oakley like in person. Like, that's pretty cool. I want to wear that too.
I was amazed though, Luxottica with all those brands from Ray-Ban and Oakley, they do stay very in their lanes. And again, the social media person in me is like, can we find a fun campaign, much like Disney did and Marvel with their launch of Disney Plus, where everybody under the umbrella was tweeting something genuine and authentic. But I don't know. I think. If you ask me, if they want to ask my advice, there's some untapped potential over there where I think there's some crossover from, the Ray-Ban that Will wears on a Saturday to maybe the Oakley he wears on Sunday for golf.
I do wear Ray-Bans.
Exactly.
I thought that I was on the same thought train as you there. Like, I definitely think I had that social brain of like, well, you guys should be collaborating. These brands should be talking to each other.
So many cool brands, man. Like, Prada, Ray-Ban, Oakley, the list goes on and on and on. So, all right. So thank you so much for your listening to the program. We appreciate 5 stars on iTunes as well. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube, episode 85. Thanks so much to David Furker, Will Kelly for setting up the new studio. If you're watching on YouTube, this is a new studio. Hopefully you like the new sheetrock behind me. This has been yet another edition of the Business Social Podcast. My name is David Brickley, and it's all been powered by STN Digital.